I wrote a story earlier in the season. I think Colorado was still unbeaten at this point, so kind of captured that momentum. But just about like what Deion Sanders' potential as an NFL head coaching candidate would be. And basically, I'm pretty sure everybody I spoke to, if not the vast majority, said you have to at least bring him in for an interview. And maybe he says, hey, you know what? I'm thanks, but no thanks. I genuinely want to stay at Colorado, see this thing through. Okay, give him the opportunity to turn you down. Maybe you bring him in and you realize you're a perfect college head coach. You're not for my NFL organization. But I truly believe you're doing a disservice to your organization if you don't at least call Deion Sanders and try to bring him in for an interview.
I love this so much. The content would be just out of this world.
Pat's Interference is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
We have Jeff Howe back from The Athletic, National NFL Insider from The Athletic. He is tackling, I think we have 14 mailbag questions, which I know I told you was going to be the theme today. Did you expect 14?
I actually predicted 14 on the number.
Okay, good.
I'm ready.
I need to take you to the casino. Because the promise was, look, folks, we want to get to every single question, know what's on your mind. And there are going to be a lot of overlap here talking about Belichick and the future of the team and the next head coach and the GM. And so I figured that, when I invited you to come on, I said, here's what we're going to do. But if you're hot on something, let's do that first. And I'm expecting you to have something along those lines, Bill or the GM or whatever's going on. 2-8. There's a lot of problems to address. But the problem you chose was I pulled my back and I'm getting old. So do you want to talk about that? Are you okay? Do we have any update here?
It's finally starting to get better.
Good man.
It's turning 40 sucks, man. I'm not new to the pulled back muscle situation here. I've probably done it 4 or 5 other times in the past. But I feel like I earned those previous ones. I could trace it to one particular event, picking up a dumbbell and not having the right form in my head, or trying to move a box that was way too big, or trying to push a couch across a room. And it's just doing dumb stuff. This was just all I can say is I turned 40 and my back just decided it wasn't going to work for 5 days. So it's awesome. It's great.
Masterful job by you slipping in the gym reference there, but it really wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't have some sort of mention of weightlifting here. So yeah, let's get to the mailbag questions. One twist that I did not tell you about in this list of 14 questions, Jeff, there is a fake question, one that I wrote myself. And here's the deal. If you can pick out the fake question in this mailbag, you don't have to answer it. But if you do, and you pick the wrong question, we have to go 5 minutes for that lucky person. So not only is everyone who asked a question getting their answers, but one of you might get an extended answer if Jeff hears the question and incorrectly diagnoses that it is the fake one. Because obviously, to you, this real person asking the question, you're probably offended. So we're going to make it up to you. And I will say I did not make this obvious. So this is not can you tell me the top 5 things you love about Andrew the most, and why is him being good looking the first? It's a Patriots question. So we'll see what you can do. All right. Leading off, Fiora, like most fans, down in the dumps. She's asking, quote, how many years will it take to rebuild the Patriots? They are so weak at so many positions, massive turnover coming on both the player and coaching side. I can't see this being a 1 or even 2 year project. So first of all, do you agree? And how long do you think it takes?
I do agree. And it's crazy how quickly things can change, because when we were talking, probably the last time we were on here together, there was some optimism that this was a team that could flirt with between 8 and 10 win category. Maybe their defense was on an upward trajectory. I certainly remember complimenting the way the defense was built, and that among a lot, they've got the injury excuse more than the offensive side, I think. But the bigger picture here is I think this is a long-term rebuild. And when you bring in a new regime, if that's what happens, coaches and GMs really, they want 3 years. They want 3 years in order to be able to bring in the right kind of people, to make some mistakes maybe in that first offseason or what have you. I mean, 2 years is really fast, but best case scenario, they wind up with the first or second pick. They get Caleb Williams or Drake May. And if they have the offensive staff to support their development, and if that happens, again, whether it's Belichick overseeing that offensive staff and that thing goes according to plan, how they hope, or they bring in a new offensive staff and they help that quarterback in the upward trajectory, then even if it's all you need to do is see some optimism at the end of year one with that rookie quarterback. And then it's like, okay, like you're on your way. I mean, look at what happened with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville in year two. You knew you had that piece in the right spot, and now you just need to develop everything around him, and you can deal with those lumps because you know you have the most important player in place. Look at Houston with C.J. Stroud. This is going much faster than they ever could have anticipated. And, there's also the situations like the Giants where there's maybe some false confidence in that first year because you need a reset, and internally those organizations know, okay, yeah, we're going to carry over some momentum from the previous year, but there's still a bit of a rebuild or a takedown here in place. So it depends on if they get their quarterback in place. It certainly wouldn't be a bad thing to get Marvin Harrison at number 3. But really, like, you need the quarterback in place. And if it's not, you got to start to get creative in order to accelerate this rebuild.
So part of me just wants to stop for a second and sink into the fact that it's mid-November, November 15th, we record on Wednesday afternoon, and just go, we're talking about the New England Patriots having a top 3 pick, and that being a likelihood, not just an outside possibility, because of how crazy it is and how fast things have changed in the last 2 months. Another part of me goes, look, they need to shake that off, this idea that this is a surprise, as fast as possible. And I think they have. I think there's a resignation and acceptance in all parts of that building that the season is lost and they just got to move on. But it is crazy. As far as my answer on this, I think I land – it kind of depends on who the next guy is, right? Because let's say, as we've all kind of indicated or reported, like Jerod Mayo's the guy. The next most important hire is going to be the offensive coach and quarterbacks coach, and maybe you bring someone new in. But then you're not ripping everything down to the studs, whether it's a philosophy in the front office, the coaching staff. You're kind of tweaking what's in place, modernizing, updating, putting a twist on it. I think that would allow for a quicker rebuild, understanding you might get a better chance of bringing back Mike Onwenu, Kyle Duggar, maybe Josh Uche, and you add on top of what's there. If you have a new coach and a new front office, not only are they going to take more time to rebuild what they've torn down, but they're going to have more leeway, I think, because if things are sour after Jerod Mayo for year 2, that's an easier plug to pull going, okay, we're doing the same things that are just a little tweaked and different, but this isn't any kind of different result here. We expected more, even if he's a younger head coach. And so I think it kind of depends on what they do next, which we, of course, won't know for another 2 months, which I guess begs the question, and this is not the fake one. Are you of the belief that this is Bill's last year? We haven't talked about this on or off the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I do think that's the direction they're heading in. There's something is broken here. And yeah. I mean, kind of jumping off of a point you just made, like, do you plug and play Mayo and kind of keep some stability? What about this process over the last couple of years suggests that all of a sudden a quick fix is, something that's going to elevate this locker room or, the questions with the personnel and all that stuff? I mean, there are, you look at some of the Belichick tree failures, most recently Josh McDaniels, and you've got to wonder, okay, are these guys too rigid with how they operate? I mean, I think Jerod Mayo has all the tools in the world. I've said it for 5 years. I said it I covered all but 1 year of his playing career. Like, he's a ridiculously smart human being, a really good leader, a guy who has all the tools that you would want to be a head coach. I've said similar things about past Belichick tree coaches, and that hasn't worked out. So you've got to take an honest look in the mirror and say, look, you could believe in this guy, but maybe he's not the right guy for this building. And that's a tough one that's I think the toughest thing for Robert Kraft to answer down the road when it comes to this point, whether it's this offseason or another one, is if you keep things status quo and you allow everybody to operate under with the tools that they've been taught from Belichick, how quickly, realistically, is everything going to change? I mean, if you clean house, if you bring in a Ben Johnson, Frank Smith, whatever, you bring in a new general manager with a completely different vision, yeah, maybe you do elongate that rebuild, but at least you're doing it with a different type of philosophy, and you're going to give that a shot. Whereas, like you said, okay, if Mayo doesn't work by the end of year 2 and you go in a different direction, that's really prolonging this rebuild, because then you allowed this system to stay in place, and then you saw, okay, this isn't going to work, and now you have to reset 2 years from now as opposed to this offseason.
All right. Well, that leads us to the next question from Gary, or maybe not Gary. Let's assume that Mayo is or has been the head coach in waiting. What was the successor for GM or football ops? What was the plan there? Was it Bill, or was the plan always to have that person take the job with the head coach in place, which isn't exactly normal? Okay, so I think basically Gary's asking what was the plan in the front office. And look, they committed to Jerod Mayo, released a statement about not even we've signed him to a deal. It's that we intend to do so, which was unprecedented for the Patriots to give any sort of update, which told you, which proved to be true. This was from the Crafts. So the Crafts are in on Mayo. And again, assuming that Mayo was still the guy after what will be a 3-14 or 4-13 or 5-12, whatever season, what do you think happens here with the front office?
I think if you are going to stay stable with the Belichick tree, then you're probably going to keep Matt Groh or Elliott Wolf. Really, you go to Dave Ziegler and see if you can bring some of those guys back. There are former Belichick executives who are still with a number of front offices around the league. Maybe you see if they're better suited than Groh. Maybe you think about promoting Wolf, who I know is very highly regarded around the league. So I think if you're keeping Mayo in place, you want somebody he's familiar with in the front office, as opposed to somebody completely different, because then you've got the potential for uncomfortability here. Let's say you bring in, I know we're going to get through some potential GM candidates. Let's say you bring in an outside guy, and after year 1 or year 2, this outside guy, who's the GM, who's technically the head coach's boss, says this isn't working and I want to go in a different direction. I want to go in my own direction. Then all of a sudden you've got 2 people going up the back stairs to ownership, jockeying for power. So that's why stability is important.
Yeah, I knew you've seen that play out in Miami with Brian Flores and Chris Greer. A number of times in Cleveland, it just seems to be a series of dysfunction. It's the longest running drama show in the NFL. But for
Foxboro with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, there you go. And so I don't know what the front office plan is here. Like, I'm glad, you're here to answer that part of it, because I think what you would love to have is some sort of package deal. Like you bring up Ziegler went to Vegas with Josh McDaniels. They're aligned in philosophy, the type of players they want, the things they want to instill in their culture. Obviously, that did not pan out at all in Las Vegas, but it's someone that Jerod Mayo is familiar with and therefore probably either in the building or recently left. When it comes down to Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf, however, I personally would want to lean towards Elliott Wolf, understanding that he came up at least in a different system. And I think what that front office has suffered from, as well as the coaching staff in recent years, is just a lack of diversity of thought. Like, where are the new ideas coming from? When everyone started in the organization, learned the rules as Belichick set them, and then just rose up the ranks. They're not coming from anywhere. And so someone who's had outside experience, whether it's Wolf or Ziegler or other people who have left the organization and gotten fired, I think would be a benefit, because they can blend other ideas with what they have in the Patriots. Because at that point, if Mayo is staying, as Gary assumed, you're building on a foundation, but updating it, modernizing it again, not only just on the coaching and the culture side, but in the front office as well.
Yeah, I'll just make a real quick point there, just to add to something earlier. Like, Elliott Wolf is very highly regarded. Yeah. And I think he is the future of that front office if you stay in-house.
Yeah. I've written about it before, and you know more than I do, but in speaking with a few agents, it sounds like they deal with him a lot more than they have Matt Groh. And they weaned Matt Groh onto like some very basic early re-signings, like, hey, take care of Brian Hoyer a couple years ago, or this and that, like straightforward kind of deals, because he came up exclusively through the scouting side and didn't really have more pro personnel experience, where Elliott's really taken on that side and that role as someone I think is more comfortable as a negotiator. Is that fair?
Probably. Yeah. Well, Wolf he's more well-rounded, I think.
Yeah, I like that.
And snap into NFL action this season with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200. That's 200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, you hear me make these ad reads, and hopefully don't fast forward. Get your money and get into the action right now. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and lots more. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. $200 in bonus bets with just your first $5 bet.
Ever wish you could navigate the betting field with the confidence of a pro? Enter Odds Are. They're not a sports book, but they're the sports betting advisor you've always needed. It's like having a playbook for smarter bets right in your pocket. I've been absolutely loving the experience, and I think you will too. Especially since Patriots Press Pass listeners get a 30-day free trial. Elevate your game day and join the smart betting revolution. Go get it at oddsr.com/presspass. That's oddsr.com/presspass.
All right, Lamar's question. Quote, if the Patriots were to make an external head coach hire this offseason, who would you like to see as an ideal scenario? Some names I've seen floating around are Ben Johnson, Lou Anarumo, Jim Harbaugh, Eric Bieniemy. So you're talking about the Lions offensive coordinator, Bengals defensive coordinator. What do you call Jim Harbaugh? I think his official title is head coach. It also just might be head case at Michigan. Eric Bieniemy, of course, offensive coordinator with the Commanders. I'm not particularly high on any of those. Maybe the first two, but you go first again.
Deion Sanders.
The media's unanimous pick is bringing. Yeah. I can't call him Coach Prime. You have no shame if you were a media member addressing him as Coach Prime, but I will. Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
I think I wrote a story earlier in the season. I think Colorado is still unbeaten at this point, so kind of captured that momentum. But just about like what Deion Sanders' potential as an NFL head coaching candidate would be. And basically, I'm pretty sure everybody I spoke to, if not the vast majority, said you have to at least bring him in for an interview. And maybe he says, hey, you know what? I'm thanks, but no thanks. I genuinely want to stay at Colorado, see this thing through. Okay, give him the opportunity to turn you down. Maybe you bring him in and you realize you're a perfect college head coach. You're not for my NFL organization. But I truly believe you're doing a disservice to your organization if you don't at least call Deion Sanders and try to bring him in for an interview.
I love this so much. The content would be just out of this world. Never mind that they're 4-6 right now, and their social media team. It has to be at his direction. Just put out a series of sentences with his, stare out into the distance where it was like, I'm here, basically, I'm staying here, and drawing a lot of attention to himself because it's always about Deion. But, man, the prime stories and content and clips and press conferences, I cannot think of a bigger 180 from Bill Belichick to Deion Sanders.
So hear me out here. You want to really get wild.
Yes,
bring in Deion. You wind up with the third pick because let's say you beat the Giants. You draft Marvin Harrison. Deion gets Shador to declare. You get Shador at number 35. Now you get the Sanders ticket with Marvin Harrison, a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. And you want to talk about you got the dichotomy between going from Belichick and not saying anything to Deion Sanders to saying everything. And you've got somebody who could be one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL the moment he puts on NFL cleats. Somebody that the Patriots haven't had since basically Randy Moss in his prime. I mean, that's, I genuinely believe you need, whether you're the Patriots or whoever has an opening, you have to call Deion. Give him a chance to turn you down. That's fine. But you have to hear what he has to say because you have to find out if that translates. You want more realistic head coaching candidates.
Well, not anymore. No, I want to keep talking about this, but I think
I'm just going to bore you.
I think the people should. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Ben Johnson is going to be the number one guy. Anarumo is going to certainly get a lot more interviews again. Frank Smith, the OC with the Dolphins, I mean, just an unbelievable ability to connect with his players on a human level. I think that's becoming increasingly important in this generation in the NFL. I also think he's going to be, depending on how the next couple months play out with the Raiders, I think because he's got a Raiders past, he could be in hot commodity in Vegas. Kellen Moore, another offensive mind, he's going to be a candidate with a lot of interviews. I think it's an interesting situation where if you're the offensive minded head coach, you get to put your system in, keep it in place for as long as you're the guy. If you bring in Anarumo or any of these defensive guys, you have to hire a really good offensive coordinator, knowing full well, especially if you draft a rookie quarterback, if your offense has any sort of success, that guy's gone in probably 2 or 3 years. So it's an interesting sort of situation that these teams find themselves in. But that's why I think Johnson, Smith, and Moore are going to be 3 highly sought-after coaches this cycle.
So Tom Pelissero's annual list of half the coaches in the NFL, not to disparage a lot of research and conversations he has, but it's a very long list of potential next head coaches, potential coordinators, and then young assistants that are coming up. The Patriots had Jerod Mayo obviously listed as a candidate to become a head coach, and then among the younger assistants is rising up the ranks to Marcus Covington, who had an interview to be the DC in Arizona. Knowing how different the philosophy is between what Jonathan Gannon's running and what Covington knows, I'm curious how legitimate that interview was. But he is a very capable head coach. And then Ross Douglas, who's their receivers coach, along with Troy Brown. Look, I don't bring up any of those names other than just to share with the folks listening that they're on there. The one name that kind of caught my eye, and I like from a standpoint of, he's someone who's doing very well with an organization that I think you could pull a tag team of from a head coach and GM, understanding that front office is well respected, values a lot of the things that the Patriots do, is Mike Macdonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, who's young, who is running one of the best, if not the best defenses in the league right now. And, the Ravens and Patriots have been just chasing the same players for 25 years. So he's young, he's 36. He also worked at Michigan before that, has always been under the Harbaughs. And the thing that I always harp on with the head coaching conversation is he might be so sharp on defense, and Ben Johnson has all the best X's and the first-rate O's out there. But the head coaching job is administrative. Like, you are a principal of this football team. You are not a professor, and that's where the line gets blurred. Of you need someone who's a very good manager, and at least learning under John Harbaugh, I think, gives him an edge in being in that environment where that's been a good culture even in their bad seasons down in Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree. There's about 10 to 15 guys. I wouldn't go about 250 deep. But I think there's like 10 or 15 guys who are on the short list of head coaching candidates this hiring cycle. McDonald's certainly on them.
All right, let's move on. Ashley. She always uses my name at the start of these questions. Very nice from Ashley. Hi, Andrew. If the Patriots would have gotten, quote, just average quarterback play this year, how many more wins would they have had? I will tell you, so what, they're 2-8 right now? I would say 4-6. I think you beat 2 of the Eagles, Dolphins, or Raiders. I think you still win that Buffalo game. And because you look at some of the other games that they lost, just devastating turnovers. And with the Eagles, it was 1 foot down to late in part of that game. Mike Gesicki getting a half yard or 2 on 4th down against the Dolphins. Devontae Parker dropping that bomb. But they're falling behind in all of these games because Mac Jones, as we've said, had pick sixes or turnovers deep inside opponent's territory in Las Vegas. And you're just not going to happen if someone can just drive the bus and go the speed limit and not crash into the nearest building. So I think that's fair. But 4-6 in the NFL, as we all know, could also be 3-5 or 3-7, or 5-5, because that's just how thin the line is between victory and defeat. Is that unreasonable?
No, I think I brought up the schedule as you were talking there. I think 2 win. First of all, I want to preface this by saying, you want average quarterback play. The whole system has failed Mac Jones, and I'm not absolving him of his guilt in this equation here. He certainly has not played anywhere near the level that we've seen him capable of playing throughout his career. And whatever, we're not going to run through what could be 6 weeks worth of shows on this topic. But I think it's when you say average quarterback play, he's not the only guilty party in this. The offensive line hasn't been great, all that other stuff. Honestly, I thought he delivered average quarterback play against the Eagles. It's not his fault Kayshon Boutte, in 2 of the maybe 4 most important plays of the game, couldn't find the sideline. The Dolphins, I thought he gave you average quarterback play there too. I think he had a bad interception. But, again, that was a good Dolphins team where you needed to play better than average in order to win that game, in my opinion. I don't think any of the turnovers that he had early against the Cowboys or Saints doesn't change that outcome. You're asking for better quarterback play. You're also asking for 6 or 7 other things to go in your favor for those outcomes to be wiped away. I do think average quarterback play against the Commanders and the Colts turns those 2 games around. Certainly the Colts, most likely the Commanders. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's 4-6 as well, but probably 2 different games than the ones you picked.
Yeah, you know what? You You're absolutely right. I'm taking that L. I started from the beginning, didn't even get to the end, understanding the best case was right behind me in Germany, and then at home against the Commanders. You're right, because he made fewer total mistakes, but those were worse. And against the Eagles, he had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. So you're absolutely right. I retract what I said and stammered over. And we're moving on. Liam is asking, where is he? Do you think the Pats can actually get draft compensation for Bill Belichick in a trade this offseason?
Is this the fake one?
No, it is not. We have to spend 5 minutes on this.
All right. I do. And I meant to look this up earlier. I believe I did a story about this maybe a year or two ago. So I'm going off of memory. I think I'm correct that every head coaching trade in the course of the last 50 years, and there's only been like 6 of them, has brought a first-round pick in return. And this is something that I've certainly asked around about, and I'm not saying there's a consensus here, but if you are an organization that wants Bill Belichick and you know the Patriots have decided, hey, you know what, we're going to go our separate ways, then you absolutely make that call and you try to get something done. I mean, if you are – now,
what's the
there's
pick,
a lot – I think it's always been a first-round pick. I think it has to be a first-round pick. I mean, if you want Belichick that badly – I think you have to be willing to give up a first-round pick in order to make this happen. Who knows? Maybe negotiations go sideways at the second-round pick, but you need everybody to be on board. You know, there's a lot of – it's easy to connect the Commanders to Belichick because it's a new ownership group. They're going to want to make a splash hire. They need to be more marketable in their among their fan base. Bringing in somebody like Belichick is going to put people in the seats. But let's say Belichick sits there and says, I don't want to go to the Commanders. So, like, Robert Kraft could say, I'm going to send him to you for a first-round pick. If Belichick doesn't sign off on that, like, you don't have a trade.
Are we saying he learned from Rob Gronkowski how to stop a trade by threatening to retire, as Gronk did when Bill wanted to ship him to Detroit in 2018? Is that what happened? The master is learning from the apprentice here?
He could. I mean, I've said this for 13 years. If you're not learning from Rob Gronkowski, what are you doing? So,
I mean, he is richer than I will ever be in my wildest dreams, and he is retired at 31? I remember you and I were on the same flight when that happened. When he retired, going to the owners' meetings.
Arizona, that's right.
Yeah. First round pick. So there's a lot that goes into this conversation, right? And this conversation goes between owner to owner, which I think, in times of negotiation and leverage, like, typically favors those who are doing the selling. Like, you could go to the NBA where, the trade that sent Kevin Durant to the Suns was just everything that Phoenix had. It was a new ownership group. They were desperate. They think they know better. You get to make the easy fix. The fans are on your side. And maybe it is the Commanders. And Robert Kraft says, I'll just hang on to him. He's got 1 more year left in his deal. We've got our head coach in waiting. What are we going to wait for? But then if the Commanders go, well, who are we bidding against? Like, why am I going to cough up a first-round pick to hamstring Belichick to come in here, have to tear down, we don't have our best asset. We'll give you a 2, and you'll take it and like it. Is that something you can say no to?
No, absolutely not. I agree completely. I mean, because if they're the only team and they're an NFC team that really isn't built to win now, and they're offering a 2 and that's it, then you take the 2. I mean, if it's hypothetically, let's say it's the Cowboys. Let's say they have a first-round exit. Jerry Jones decides, all right, McCarthy's not the guy. And now all of a sudden you've got the Cowboys calling and you're Robert Kraft. And you're like, am I really going to give Bill Belichick to Jerry Jones with a roster that's ready to win? Like, look, we can poke fun at the Cowboys for their last 25 years all we want. That roster can win the next 3 Super Bowls. Like, they're that talented. So, like, do you really want to add Bill Belichick to that equation? So that might be a different situation. The problem there is, like, if the Cowboys are the only team offering, again, and you say, well, we're not going to take it, we're just going to fire him, and then he goes to the Cowboys anyway, then what did you really just accomplish?
Yeah, and then I think there are other teams which we don't actually we do, because Liam we only gave him like 4 minutes. I should have been timing it. The Giants, I've come around on, like you and I discussed off air, that, hey, they pulled the trigger on Ben McAdoo, who went 11-5 in his first season, didn't finish the second year. More complicated there with Eli's legacy at stake and whatnot. Joe Judge, gone after 2 years, deserved or not. And so Brian Daboll at 2-8, like, they're headed for the second pick right now, and it doesn't look like they're going to rise anywhere above the top 5, so long as Tommy DeVito is still the starting quarterback, and he will be this Sunday against those Commanders. So maybe there is a bigger market, which frankly, if you're Kraft, that's exactly what you want, because that'll drive his price up. And all of these owners, not only is it just you're bidding against more people, but the Commanders against the Giants. I mean, that's perfect. You have two divisional foes who go, if we don't get him, we'll see him twice a year. Forget what the last 4 years have been in New England. He's still the greatest coach of all time, and we can get him here for at least 3 more years, or face him in that other instance.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, and again, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not trying to source any information. Belichick and Daboll have been very close for years. So if this is a situation where, like, if if the Giants or Mara or whoever's behind that decision fires Daboll first and then goes after Belichick, okay, maybe he thinks, okay, this makes sense. If they try to backdoor this situation and say, we're going to bring you in, but it's going to come at Daboll's expense, I would be very surprised if Belichick went through with something like that. The other thing is, Joe Schoen is doing a good job as GM. Again, this is a long rebuild. So I'm sure he's got his detractors in New York who would disagree, but I think Joe Schoen is doing a good job. If you're Mara, do you bring in Belichick knowing that Belichick is going to have a boss who's going to oversee the personnel? And what's that relationship going to be like? If you're Belichick and you're used to running your own organization and you don't have to answer to anybody for the most part, do you want to work with a GM? So you got to kind of wonder how that sort of aspect plays out too.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. All right, I think we gave Liam enough.
Okay, so we all know what's coming on Thanksgiving. You got football, you got family. Then there's going to be that giant turkey, lots of stuffing, pumpkin pie, apple pie, everything you name it. But what are you going to eat before then? What are you going to eat after? This holiday season, as we all start to run around, you might be looking for some convenient, nutritious meals. And I'm telling you right now that especially on your jam-packed days of shopping and busy work, you can find them with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat delivery meal service. Factor can help you fuel for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Whether you're too busy running around to plan lunch, Factor's got you covered. Effortless, wholesome meals like grain bowls or salad toppers, they're all ready to eat on the go, no microwave required. There are also calorie-conscious options that taste just great. Try delicious dietitian-approved calorie smart meals with around or less than 550 calories. If you need an extra boost, like I do, I love my Protein Plus meals with 13 grams of protein or more per serve. Whatever you're looking for this holiday season, you can find it with Factor. So head to factormeals.com/Callahan50. It's my last name, 50, and use code Callahan50 to get 50% off. That's code Callahan50, CALLAHAN 50 at factormeals.com/Callahan50 to get 50% off.
Let's do another question. This is from John. I think you've answered this already, but the question is, quote, if the Patriots move on from Belichick, is it just time to move on from anyone associated with him and his coaching tree and bring in a new philosophy from outside the organization? So basically, this isn't the question that John asked, but we've discussed a lot of, what the rebuild would take, who would take over in either instance, and different candidates. Would you prefer, you personally, Jeff Howe, or sitting in for Robert Kraft, think it's better for them to go with Jerod Mayo and company and let him bring in some different people, or completely start anew?
I would start over unless, again, these last 7 games show some sort of signs of life. I mean, I think having Jerod Mayo and Josh McDaniels before that as the succession plan made all the sense in the world if you were just trying to sustain the momentum that Belichick left behind upon his retirement. But if you need to completely rebuild this thing, I think you probably just owe it to yourself to try to find a different philosophy.
I haven't landed there just yet because I think largely the philosophy, and people get so reductive in the whole, it was Brady the whole time. Like, we cannot rewrite history or all the low-scoring games they won in the playoffs or in 2003, in 2004, 2005, 2006, before Brady became Brady. I think a lot of it works, but it needs some updating. Like in writing a story last month about, Mac Jones' downfall and the things that he's done wrong and have gone wrong for him. You find a front office that someone told me is dabbled in analytics and tries it, but it often just boils down to whatever Bill thinks. And sometimes they're working as hard as they can, and it's just his gut feeling. And stuff like that, I think you can probably throw out and add in some more modern evaluation techniques or processes and systems that could give you a better chance at landing better players because they just don't have as much. So I don't know. I could see either way. I'm probably with you though. If this is, it's crazy to think if it's 6-11, that's a big difference than 3-14. And yet you think by now, like, you got a clean house, but I don't know. I want to see a little bit more.
There's a couple things I'd add to that. I alluded to this in a story I wrote earlier this week about the Patriots. The 2000 Patriots went 3-3 down the stretch there. And granted, they finished 6-10, 5-11, whatever it was.
5-11, yeah.
They went 3-3 down the stretch. And I know people, 23 years later will hear me say this and probably roll their eyes. But I would not say it if I didn't mean it and if I didn't think people were being genuine with me. The players on that 2000 team who were holdovers and stayed in 2001 said absolutely that 3-3 finish helped them carry some momentum into the 2001 season. And there were, I think it was Willie McGinnis. There was a guy in that locker room who sold Rodney Harrison. Oh, not Rodney Harrison. Good Lord. There was a big free agent who came in 2002, and it's killing me that I can't think of who it was. But they were like, hey, look, I know the record wasn't good last year, but we're on to something. And they helped recruit guys who came in, and it's killing me that I can't think of who this player was. It was Roman Pfeiffer. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Pfeiffer was a bigger free agent than I think people probably realized at that point. But they had guys who were like, hey, come play for this team. I'm telling you, we're onto something. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go 3-3 down the stretch here and all of a sudden they're going to win the Super Bowl next year. Like I'm not even in that neighborhood. I'm not in that zip code. But it is important with the way you finish. And if they do finish and maybe they do change some things up after the bye, they change some of these coaching processes up or whatever. Maybe they get more. I don't know. Like Kraft sees something different. And maybe he says, hey, Bill, like give Mayo some more authority. I don't know how that would go over. But, let's just say something does get tinkered down the stretch. And there is a reason to believe that the momentum can be sustainable into next year. Then, yeah, maybe you do keep what you've got and you do change the processes. I mean, the 2021 draft was a much more collaborative approach than most of the last, let's call it 5 to 8 drafts. And it was the best draft class they've had in quite some time. I don't believe it's been as collaborative the past 2 years. And certainly the 22 draft is shaping up to be a disaster. So if you bring in Mayo or you promote Mayo and you say, look, you're going to coach the football team, Wolf and Groh and whoever else they have running the personnel department is going to do their job. They're going to control the draft and they're going to put the roster together and you guys are going to work in harmony and Mayo is on board with that. Then I think, okay, that makes some sense. But I still think you want to modernize the offense.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're in the same area. It's just a matter of like, what's your actual address versus I live in this area of town. Like, we're in agreement here. Eric is asking, could Bill force his way to the Giants with a potential trade? And the hypothetical, I love this part, compensation being a pick swap in the first round if the Giants finish with a worse record than the Patriots, which is, of course, very important right now because the Patriots are expected to pick third. A lot of season to go, yada, yada. The Giants are second. And this is, at least for now, seen as a 2-quarterback class at the very top, elite can't-miss prospects, Caleb Williams and Drake May. So you make that swap. You get a chance at one of those two guys, and the other team does not. But the other team in this instance gets Bill Belichick. I don't know how likely this is. I don't even know if this is possible. But this kind of like rights to swap picks, NBA-style trade, I freaking love considering the stakes and the characters and the teams involved.
I really like that proposal. That's a cool one for two reasons. I like it for both teams, actually. And this has a chance to bite the Giants. I don't want to rehash all the stuff we just mentioned about Dayball and Shane and all that stuff. This has a chance to bite the Giants if Drake May and or Caleb Williams turn into absolute superstars. And whatever the Giants plan a quarterback, let's say they move on from Daniel Jones a year from now, it doesn't pan out, then you sit there and you have some big-time regret. But on the Patriots side, Caleb Williams is he's got the Patrick Mahomes playing style. Drake May has been described to me as a hybrid Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, 6'4", 230, massive arm. I mean, this is the prototypical quarterback you build to play in the Northeast, especially when you get up toward New England. When it's going to get cold, you need a physical guy. You need a guy who can really put some spin on the ball and launch it. So I think Drake May. Look, Caleb Williams certainly has a higher ceiling, and I'm not saying he's got a lower floor or anything like that. But like 2-3 months ago, this was viewed as the Caleb Williams class, and then maybe Drake May enters the conversation. Drake May is more than in the conversation. This is a guy who is basically any other year, the last 5 years, except the Trevor Lawrence year. Every other year, going back to post Andrew Luck, is in the conversation for a number one pick. He is quite possibly the best. He's shaping up to be the best consolation prize at potentially number 2 as any quarterback that we've seen in quite a while. So Drake May would be perfect for New England. So that'd be a great opportunity for the Patriots if that's who they wind up with. Now, whoever, let's say number 1 goes May and you get Caleb Williams, that works out just fine too. But then if you're the Giants, you need help at receiver and you need help on the offensive line. Whoever you want. Take Marvin Harrison. He's going to help you. Take a left tackle. There's 3 of them that are going to help you quite a bit too. And if you're Belichick, you've got Daniel Jones, whose contract is fully guaranteed next year now that he's missing the end of this season with an injury. You've got a veteran quarterback who's coming back who has some limitations, but is a guy who can possibly help you win some games right off the bat.
I love it so much. A couple other quarterbacks worth mentioning. J.J. McCarthy for Michigan, Michael Penix out in Washington, Shadur Sanders, future head coach, quarterback combo of the New England Patriots. The funny part about this, though, is let's say this happens, which I don't think it will. This is just kind of a thought exercise here. And it is 2-3. It is the Patriots, the Giants, and Belichick goes back. If Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there at 3, and I understand you've already put him in Canton. You have fit him for a gold jacket. You sent it to his house. You've put Pro Bowl trophies and MVPs in his award and trophy case. I don't think Bill takes Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. I think he takes an offensive tackle or trades down, which answers a question from Jordan. How likely is it that Bill trades down from any top 5 pick we get this offseason? Because his investment in receivers, or lack thereof, is so well documented from the draft and free agency. I just am enjoying the thought of the press conference after this, again, hypothetical scenario we're just kind of walking through, of the Giants have the 3rd pick because they got Belichick and swapped with the Patriots. And then 2 quarterbacks go. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., can't miss receiver prospect of this generation, is sitting there at 3, and Bill says no thanks for a team that is just right there with the Patriots in the basement of the league when it comes to pass catchers. How does that go for those reporters who are like, okay, yeah, the tackle for Penn State's great, but they already have 2 first-round tackles?
I'm wearing a Lowell High sweatshirt right now. I think I'm going down in history as the first person to ever wear a Lowell High sweatshirt on a podcast. And I say that because I have family members who are Patriots season ticket holders, and I would feel for them if Belichick overlooked Marvin Harrison to take a tackle. And the hard thing there is, like, there are the Penn State kid, you've got Alt from Notre Dame. Yeah. There's like 1 or 2 other guys who could be top 10 picks. It's a really good time to need a tackle if you're going into the draft. And there's like the whole thing of like, I mean, shoot, I cover the whole league. I still watch I've seen all 10 Patriots games. I know they need a tackle. I know they need one badly. And everybody always wants a tackle until it's time to draft one. And there's a shiny receiver there on the board. But you look at, I hope I'm not screwing this up and blending draft classes, but, you got the Lions who got Sewell. You got the Bengals who got Chase. Both of those teams, I think those were 5, 6 in the same draft. If they're not, just play along and humor me. Both of those teams are happy with their selections right now, even though the Bengals still need a tackle. I think if you pass over a wide receiver who for really like the last 2 years has been earmarked for Canton, that's a hard sell. And
Jeff, we did
everything
we did what's best for the team. We put the best player on the board. We did what's best for the football team. I've said it 50 times.
It's the other part too is like I've written this. I've studied this. I mean, the first part, like, you can get wide receivers anywhere, assuming you know how to scout them. The Patriots really haven't proven that. You cannot get quality left tackles after the top 40. And you really have to get lucky to get a good one in the 20 to 40 range. Like, if you want a quality left tackle, you got to go top 10. So it's like, you can take a left tackle over Marvin Harrison Jr. and not be wrong. But, man, it's going to be hard to sell T-shirts.
I'm just looking forward to you introducing him in the 2047 Pro Football Hall of Fame class. This is going to be a great time in Cannes, which who knows? Maybe we individually fly there in cars. Maybe that's the time. Okay. That was fun. I think there's a good chance Bill trades down or does something, but I also don't think he's going to be here. So, Jordan, you don't have to worry about it. Eric, thank you for the content. Mac Jones Tank Commander. This is the name of our next questionnaire. And he is asking, or she is asking, or they are asking, who is hitting free agency next year? They have so many needs and a ton of cap space that the Patriots can improve across the whole roster. Here are the big names. On offense, Trent Brown, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Mike Onwenu. Defensively, Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, and a couple other smaller pieces. But the defensive line is pretty much intact, and they locked up Bentley and Tavai in the last 12 months, so they're not going anywhere, and they're your starting linebackers. I'm sorry, but that's about it. I guess I just answered his question. I guess I don't have anything to ask you. But of those, give me really quickly, and we'll go on to the next one, the most probable to re-sign and most important to re-sign.
I think looking at the state of the roster, some of the recent drafts, you've got to take care of the homegrown talent. I mean, the fact of the matter is they're not re-signing their top picks. Like, I think Dietrich Wise is the last position player that they've drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds who was signed in the 4th round pick.
Yeah. What's that? He was a 4th round pick. The last pick they've re-signed was Jake Bailey, who's now obviously not here anymore. And then before that, Zach Cox had this the other day.
Was it Bentley?
No, but top two picks, or top first or second round. Maybe it was Jamie Collins.
No, they traded him at the end of his rookie year, at the end of his rookie contract.
All right, I'll find this. Keep going. But wait, give me some names though. Most important to re-sign, and the one do you think they will?
Was that the last one?
Yeah.
No, he didn't re-sign. Ted Karras? I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, I know it's going to turn into a podcast where we just name baseball players from the 1970s.
Yes.
Trent Brown he's not a perfect player. You can't lose any more talent on the offensive line. So I would keep him. Kyle Duggar is somebody that I would certainly really, really go all out to try to sign. I'm not sure I would make him a top 3 safety in terms of payment, but short of that, I would make him a priority. I've always thought very highly of Josh Uche. I'm concerned about the injury pattern. That's not something that has just been an NFL thing. And maybe this is part of that, but I'm also concerned about the diminished production without Matt Judon. So I'd be curious, what type of contract he commands. Onwenu, I think, has the ability to continue being a fantastic offensive lineman. So those are the ones. I mean, I think Hunter Henry, if it's $5 to $7 million a year, sure, but he is no longer a guy who deserves or has or should be in the conversation to be a top 10 paid tight end because you can draft those guys.
So I'm starting with the tackles. I don't know if Trent Brown wants to come back, though, frankly. It'll depend a lot on the new head coach. But Michael Onwenu can play right tackle in the NFL. You have not had a legitimate right tackle since Trent Brown was over there in 2021. The answer to the question that I botched and then researched, and you couldn't find an answer for it, was the last draft pick the Patriots have made in the top 3 rounds who received a second contract, so first, second, or third round pick, was Duron Harmon, who was drafted in 2013 out of Rutgers. And since then, Jake Bailey's re-signed. He was a 5th round pick in 2019. That's bad, is the lesson there. All right, moving on. Mac Jones, Tank Commander. This is from Jeff. Is there a world in which the Patriots pull a GM or head coach from the media like the 49ers did with John Lynch? And if so, who would it be?
Rob Gronkowski.
That is a good answer because you know what this was?
Was that the fake one?
This is the fake question, yeah.
Oh, wow. I'll give you a serious answer. I think the only – maybe I hope I'm not missing anybody. The only truly qualified prominent media analyst for a job like that would be Louis Riddick.
Good answer.
He's really, really smart. I think he's absolutely capable of running a front office. He's got the experience in the past, and I'm surprised he has not gotten this opportunity yet. He's genuinely good, and I think deserves the opportunity.
All right. Well, fake Jeff is happy with his answer. On to real Jeff. I stole this guy's intro to his question. Is there a world in which Belichick realizes just how bad the team is, and in order to secure the best draft pick possible, just doesn't sign anyone else to play the secondary? So he's basically asking the Patriots to play some of their practice squad corners, like Breon Borders, who apparently would be the ultimate immaculate grid answer because he's been on 9 different teams but hasn't played for most of them, including the Patriots. I think this is, of course, a question sparked by Jack Jones no longer being with the team. J.C. Jackson was back at practice today before the bye after being left home for Germany. Bill is not tanking, which is really the essence of this question, and it's just been pointed at the secondary. So, no, they'll fill out the roster. They claimed JaMychal Hasty recently. Like he's still going to plot along and try to get as many wins so he can get closer to Shula and just salvage whatever he can from the season.
Yeah, I think Bill mentioned it earlier this week. Like, he plays the guys who deserve to play, and that comes with some ire from the fan base. I certainly understand that. Benching guys like J.C. Jackson and Jack Jones wasn't a popular move from what I saw on Twitter, but those guys haven't necessarily shown up, and it's, I think, since been proven with the release of Jack Jones, and they weren't playing all that well. And really? I understand there's some criticism of the guys that they played over them, but Belichick has always looked, and I'm not defending it, I'm just defending the pattern of decisions here. If somebody is giving you 100% in practice, if they're not as talented as the quote-unquote starter, like, more often than not, they're going to find their way on the field. And I think that's just a backdoor way of me answering, like, first of all, there's nobody on the open market right now who's going to come in and make this team, like, much better. If they are, they're not signing with the Patriots. They're going to a team that has a chance to win in the playoffs. So I think it's going to be the young guys, whoever's in-house. If there's a tank mentality, which would be totally off the grid for Belichick, I mean, it's going to come with whatever the quarterback decision is going to be. And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I shouldn't say I wouldn't be surprised. I could see a scenario, however much of a long shot this is, where Belichick says to Robert Kraft, you're getting a top 2 pick. You're going to get Caleb Williams or Drake May. Let me see this thing through for one more year. And I could see that being the one move that salvages his job. I shouldn't say the one move, but like one scenario, one potential scenario. That's all I got there.
All right, moving on. This is from Adam. I think it was Adam. The first 2 words of the question are Adam Peters as a general manager. What do you think of him as a general manager? Adam Peters, currently the assistant general manager of the 49ers. Could he work with Mayo if Mayo was the head coach? He has worked in New England before, but has outside experience and regarded as one of the best talent identifiers, usually you say evaluators, in the league. San Francisco has had some great drafts. So I asked you about this off air because I was not too familiar with Adam Peters' work. He started front office work in Denver, where he actually overlapped briefly with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler when Ziegler was way low in the totem pole in the front office. Josh was the head coach. That's a long time ago. But if a guy is looking for his first GM job, what do you think?
Very highly regarded. And I think it's a virtual lock that he'll be a GM at some point in the very near future. I think he's going to be on the short list of candidates this offseason on this hiring cycle. I wrote down a bunch of names for as candidates.
Let's go.
As outside caliber guys. The first one I'm going to give you is a complete long shot. I don't think it's realistic, but I think Will McClay with the Cowboys is the architect of that roster. And I don't think Will McClay wants to leave Dallas, and I know Jerry Jones doesn't want Will McClay to leave Dallas. So this is an extreme long shot. But Will McClay's eye for talent, his track record in assembling that Dallas roster is really, really highly regarded among his peers in that organization. And the reason I bring him up, even though he's a huge long shot, if you're Robert Kraft and you want to go get the best and you've got a blank check, you give it to Will McClay. And again, sort of like with Dion, give him the opportunity to say no, but bring him in and see if that's somebody who's attainable. Jerry Jones might come at you with a check that has an extra 0, and it might not work. But, that's the guy right there.
A lot of Johnny Walker Blue. Yeah. Go
on. Jeff Ireland is a guy that I've heard for a couple of years is getting very close to coming back. And I think there's a connection with him. He overlapped with the Saints with Frank Smith when he was a position coach under Sean Payton. So I could see them being a package deal wherever they wind up. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I think that'd be a good one. Then it's crazy. It's wild, like how quickly things can change in the NFL landscape. 5 years ago, this topic would blow everybody's mind. The fact that we're even talking about this with the Patriots. Now you want to roll it over, and I'm going to sit here and say that you need to start learning from the Lions. You look at Mike Disner, who is the COO, or I think the COO with the Lions, and is a guy who has more of a Howie Roseman style background, was a contract negotiator, a cap guy, not necessarily like a scouting type of front office guy, but that was Roseman's background. Not going to sit here and say that because Roseman did it, you're going to get a rock solid GM with Disner, just like you're not going to get a 6th round quarterback and turn him into Tom Brady. But a little more off the grid. You want to get more on the grid? Go to Ray Agnew, who's their assistant GM. Agnew is a former Patriots player. See what he has learned from Brad Holmes during their years together in Detroit with the Rams. So those are the Lions package that you'd be interviewing. Now you go to Philly. You look at Roseman's 2 assistant GMs, John Ferrari and Alec Halaby, a Harvard grad. You look at, that's the best run front office right now in the league, and it might not even be all that close. You want to see if you can get one of Howie Roseman's guys. It's time for the league to start poaching some of that talent in that front office. They lost their coaching staff last year under Sirianni. Roseman might start losing some of his top lieutenants. Nolan Teasley is the assistant GM in Seattle, a guy who is an up-and-comer. I don't know if this is going to be the year that he starts getting GM interviews, but that's a very well-orchestrated Seattle roster. Dan Morgan with Carolina, Adrian Wilson with the Cardinals, 2 guys who are very highly regarded among their peers. I feel like I keep saying that phrase, but the other part of that is I've spoken to people in similar positions in the past, guys who might be a year or 2 away from getting these GM interviews. They're working with teams that maybe the record isn't that good, but they're coming off of some good drafts. And it's like, hey, why haven't you gotten a chance to interview for a GM job? Why aren't you one of these shortlist candidates? And they're pretty frank about it. It's like, okay, yeah, you know what? We have drafted well the last 2 years, but our record is 8 and whatever gets you to the final 8 and whatever in the last 2 years. Yeah. And that's a hard sell to a fan base. So, you bring, like I've mentioned, like Dan Morgan and Adrian Wilson, 2 guys who were very highly thought of, but like it might be a harder sell because the record in Carolina this year, Arizona this year are going to be kind of tough to sell for an owner to a fan base.
Right. I love that. That was a ton of great information, places all around the league, a lot of names that I had not heard of, frankly, and I haven't done a ton of research. But I think for people who, are already looking on to 2024, and Lord knows you've got a lot of time still to do that, that's a good place to start and find out more about their background and those connections. Adrian Wilson, also Patriots legend. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
3 more. Jason is asking, given the lack of offensive weapons, should they re-sign Trent Brown and Mike Onwenu and focus on skill positions in the draft? After the first 2 tackles, it seems to be a huge drop-off. So it sounds to me like there's a lot of assumption baked into this question, in which we already know, what the quality of the offensive tackle class is. We mentioned a couple of those guys, and maybe there's a drop-off, but like generational prospects down to, certifiable day 1 starters, it's not bad. They're still, I'm not saying I know exactly what the rest of the draft class looks like, but I don't think you have to take an either-or approach. And you'd rather have some veterans in the room at both spots who are more known commodities, and also just to bring up your younger prospects. But there's no question, the Patriots need an upgrade at receiver and offensive tackle. And you don't really have any young prospects in the pipeline at either position that you can count on, because if you want to call Tyquan Thornton a bust, at least in this system and scenario, it's about fine by me in middle of year 2 right now. So if he's off the board, Kayshon Boutte had 1 catch and played something like 30 snaps against the Colts, that's fine too. But I would just say, why not both?
Yeah, even, let's say you wind up with the 5th or 6th pick and you want Brock Bowers. That's somebody described him to me as a TJ Hawkinson type of player, and is an extremely safe prospect. Somebody who checks every single box that you want, and you can argue the positional value of a tight end in the top 10, and I certainly get that. But I mean, the Patriots are getting in this draft, regardless of how the next 7 play out, they're in the best player available spot. I mean, you can't really be choosy. I mean, if the tie goes to the runner, you go to the offensive side of the ball, I think. But they need good players.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. They need good players. All right, burnt ships. So ships that have burned and are still ships. Are Steve Wilks and Brian Flores good interview candidates to replace Belichick? Both seem to have buy-in from their teams, but were fired for other reasons. And Kraft likes to hire coaches who have been head coaches before. So, again, more assumption baked in this question than I'm comfortable with, but I think the 2 candidates were names that we did not raise earlier, so it's worth exploring. Brian Flores and Steve Wilks. Wilks now is the 49ers defensive coordinator. They've had some issues, though, as far as the scheme changes, blitzing a little bit more and changing what was very successful under DeMeco Ryans and before that Robert Saleh. So I guess my short answer is no on Wilks, even if he got screwed, is the interim guy in Carolina, and I think for a year or 2 in Arizona, if I'm remembering right. And then Brian Flores, rough tenure, I think, in Miami. But I would be more open to him than Wilks, I think.
I think if you're going to stick with the Belichick tree, you've already got Jerod Mayo in house. So okay. I don't think you would go to Flores in that scenario, just because I don't see how you divert from Mayo if that's what you're looking for. Wilks, everywhere he goes, man, like the organization loves him, and somebody who, people who have interviewed him say that he absolutely has what it takes to be a head coach. You could certainly sit here and argue that he got screwed in Carolina and Arizona. Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking for head coaching retreads or guys who have had that one opportunity before, you look at Dan Quinn. There have been a couple others, of course. They're slipping my mind, along with Roman Pfeiffer here.
It's all right. It's late in the pod. We're almost done.
Yeah, but no, I mean, those are highly regarded guys. Jim Caldwell is another one. I mean, if Jim Caldwell truly wants to be a head coach, he interviewed last year in Carolina. That guy had a good run in Detroit, and it really gets overlooked. So there's certainly some talent out there if you can't get that under 40, under 45 up and comer first time head coaching type of player type of coach that people have been looking for in the post McVay, post Shanahan world. There are certainly some veteran guys out there who are attractive candidates.
Cool. I like it. As we said, reference Tom Pelissero's full directory of the NFL coaching staffs across the league. I don't mean to keep making fun of it. It takes a lot of work to put together, and he is very well connected and a great reporter. But the list is long. Last question. This is a timeless question. Many people have been asking this question, many, many people, since, I don't know, like the middle of the dynasty. Do you have any guess what this question is going to be? It's about their, I'll use the word evaluation.
And something about wide receivers?
Yes, that is exactly it. Fuad is asking, I've been trying to think why the Patriots evaluation process at the skill positions in particular have been, quote, abysmal, end quote, for such a long time. Why can't they evaluate offensive weapons? Jeff, you've had a lot of time to think of this question, dating back to your days on the Patriots beat. The people want to know, what the hell's the problem?
It's, man, if I knew, I mean, if anybody knew, I think they'd have a job down at One Patriot Place. I mean, I do remember speaking to somebody a while back about this, and they didn't have any firsthand knowledge with the Patriots, but they were like, look, I was with an organization, and I forget what position, it might have been like cornerback or something like that. And he was like, look, for like 7-8 years, we tried drafting cornerbacks, and it was a blind spot for us. We couldn't get the right player at that position. We just kept swinging, and we went, for whatever. And I mean, you could go case by case for a lot of, it's just, Malcolm Mitchell helped him win a Super Bowl, but like, you got 1 year out of him. Was that really, like, you didn't spend a 4th round pick on that guy to come up on, it's a hell of a game to come up in. But, the amount of guys that they've passed over, I mean, missing A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel in the same draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just it's not like the players haven't been on the – like it goes back to 2006 when they took Chad Jackson over Greg Jennings.
We're doing a case-by-case thing now.
But like this – you're right. The person who asked the question is right. This has been going on for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think, like you said, every organization has their blind spots. That just happens in New England. It's about wide receivers. I think there's some bad luck involved. I think it's also the difficulty of working with Tom Brady for all those years as a rookie receiver, and guys who have been more experienced during the offense longer earned his trust, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of snaps. Now, the players that they did give a chance to work with Brady, especially in the end, like N'Keal Harry, they just – I think valued the wrong things. You know, him as this big X receiver who had his best games against Arizona State's worst competition, which you're like, hey, that makes sense. But no, he didn't have a great game against their best competition. And it only gets tougher in the league. And so whether it's him or Tyquan Thornton, who, as I said at the time, was like breaking up with someone and then seeking their complete opposite, tall, skinny, long speed, not big-bodied, slow, and supposedly yards after the catch, which was what we were sold on N'Keal Harry. Like, that's not a good reason just to find someone new. You need to find a stable, healthy, good person, and instead it was just the complete opposite. So I think they waver, they try, they have some bad luck, and they're just bad at it. But I think we'll find out, because I believe I've heard the next Indiana Jones installment is Indiana Jones, and the reason why the Patriots have not been able to draft GD wide receivers for the last 25 years. So Indiana is going to find out, and we'll just have to find out together when Harrison Ford finds that at age 80, whatever that he is right now, because it is a mystery, and it's up there with wherever the hell the Holy Grail is, because no one can figure it out. Deion Branch was the last good one they drafted, and Demario Douglas might be the best since then. But
you know what's going to happen here, though, is they're gonna have the third pick next year. They're either going to trade down or bypass Marvin Harrison.
Oh, stuff.
And everybody, everybody's going to be pissed off. And then Belichick is going to draft a receiver in the second and third round, and those two are going to be the Hall of Famers. And he's just going to throw it all back in everybody's face.
Wow. That is
plot twist.
That is not going to happen. And if he does, it'll be for another team, and then it will be a Patriots curse and not a Belichick curse, which will really sting all the more. But man, how did we? Yeah, we started with Marvin Harrison Jr. and we're ending with him. How about that? Full circle.
Perfect way to do it.
Beautiful. All right, he is Jeff Howe, national NFL insider for The Athletic, first man to wear a Lowell High sweatshirt on any kind of podcast, apparently, certainly this one. And if we have another guest who does that again, it will certainly be Jeff Howe, who has to come back at some point, right?
I think this was my third, so
excellent.
Might as well put it in the books for number 4.
Well, we'll be there for Ohio State's Pro Day. I think we'll send you out, and you can report live as National NFL Insider Marvin Harrison Jr.'s agent and PR team, because you're off to a great start, buddy.
Is it conceivable that Marvin Harrison and Pat Freiermuth go into Canton at the same year?
Wow. Well, to be honest with the folks, I have not heard back from Pat Freiermuth since writing a story about him 4 years ago. Pretty much since I wrote the story. So if they do go in at the same time, I'm not going to be presenting him because he has now responded to my text. And you know what? That's fine. Not the first person to do that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.